Hey, hi, this is the teacher tuber, and today I'm going to talk about the ninth and 10th grade CBSE curriculum for English literature. Now, CBSE is one of the more popular school boards in India. It stands for Central Board of Secondary Education. It's the system I was educated in, and it's the system in which I learned most of my foundational subjects. So it's a board I have a lot of curiosity and passion for. Now that I've spent some time in the classroom, I realized that I'd like to go back and look at the curriculum again and look at things I learned and maybe reteach and relearn these things again. So that's why I'm creating this set of videos for other students in the CBSE board right now that would like some assistance in topics related to the English curriculum of the CBSE board. So let's get started. These are again documents I've got from the NCRT website that tells you the curriculum for English language and literature. Now, in the CBSE board, in grade 9 and 10, you can study English communicative or English literature. In English communicative, the focus is more on communication skills, on English for communication purposes. And in the English literature stream, there is more of a focus on looking at literary texts and developing your language skills by analyzing and interpreting these texts. So, here are the goals and targets for English language and literature. So, at the secondary stage of English language learning, the textual materials and other resources should represent a wide range of learning experience. So, this part I think is important because it shows you that they want you expose you to literature from different languages, but also want you to develop your language skills. Now, this is really important to understand in an Indian or a Indian context because most students in India speak 1 to 3 languages, their mother tongue, the national language, Hindi, and English. So, English is not often the language we think in, but it is the language we perform a lot of our daily activities in, like work or communication with friends or colleagues in professional settings. So that is why it's an important language to learn. So I think this is an important goal, facilitate self-learning. I think it also helps to summarize important ideas, not only related to your work, but also your personal life, where sometimes, you can communicate a thought in English that you may not be able to communicate in other languages. Again, I feel each language has its own depth and own complexity, and I think each language deserves that kind of attention. So let's jump into the curriculum for grade 9. Again, I will share links to these documents in the show notes so you can browse through this in more detail. So, this is the syllabus for grade 9. Now, as a teacher, this is something teachers will always do is before they teach something, they will look at the curriculum, the assessment strategies recommended, the curricular expectations and learning expectations. And I highly recommend students should also do this. And this is when you start thinking like the teacher, because when you start thinking like the teacher, you will understand what skill they want you to acquire at the end of this course. Doing that will not only make you a better learner, but will also give you a clear understanding of what kinds of skills you are trying to acquire through a particular course or program. So in English, the focus is on three major skills, or in English language and literature, the focus is on three major skills, which are reading skills, writing skills and grammar, language through literature. So one period is about 40 to 45 minutes in most CBSE schools, and they expect you to dedicate about 40 periods to help the student develop their reading skills, 40 periods to help the student develop their writing skills, and 50 periods to help the student develop their language through literature or literary analysis skills. And they mentioned that it's a suggestive number and it can change based on the context and the students you are working with. So reading skills in the final exam or the final paper has about 20 marks. Writing skills has 20 marks and language through literature has 40 marks. So this is an exam that is worth 80 marks. So in the CBSE system, we often have 2 to 3 important exams through the year. So you have your final exams at the end of an academic year, you have your midterm exams, and then you have another exam after your winter break. So I think the school year starts around September. You have one set of exams in October or November. You have another set of exams in Jan or Feb, and then a final set of exams in June or so, which is after which you have your vacations or your monsoon or summer vacations. So it's divided into an entire year with three important set of exams. And each of these exams has the same structure, 80 marks in your written paper, and the remaining 20 marks is actually allocated to classroom projects through an assignment called listening and speaking competencies. So students basically are asked to present or talk about a particular topic, and they are assessed for fluency, for the way they speak, for the way they talk in this particular topic. So let's look at the grade 9 curriculum. Okay, so in the 20 mark section of reading skills, this is the first part of the CBSE exam. You're first given a discursive passage of 400 to 450 words and then a case based factual passage. Now, you have to clearly understand what the difference is between both these passages. The case based factual passage is normally a report, or it's something that's a little more technical with a set of facts that they want you to glean from it. A discursive passage could be an extended fictional piece or a longer opinion piece about a particular topic. So, for each of these passages, they will ask you a set of multiple choice questions, very short answer questions, and objective type questions. And what are they trying to see? What are they trying to help you achieve at the end of this learning outcome or at the end of this learning experience? So, there are four things, actually, six things as they list out here. So, the first thing is comprehension, which basically means what do you understand from the story you are reading? Interpretation, which basically means how are you interpreting this particular story based on your own experience. Analysis basically means how are you analyzing what is happening in the story using literary frames of reference or other texts that you have read. And inference, I think, is a unique insight that you have on this text based on your reading of it. An evaluation is how you assess the quality of this text based on your reading of it and based on how you think what a good text should be like as a reader. Again, this is very subjective and based on your own understanding. And then vocabulary, which basically looks at how you understand the meaning of new and old words in the context of those sentences. The next part is determiners, tenses, modals, subject verb conquered, reported speech. So this is the grammar section where they will give you a set of gap filling, editing, and transformation exercises to test these particular grammatical concepts. Now, in writing skills, they will ask you to write two passages. The first passage is a descriptive paragraph where you describe a person, event, or situation based on visual or verbal cues. Again, they will tell you to describe a character based on a particular cue. They'll tell you to describe a birthday party, your 15th or 16th birthday party. They will tell you to describe a normal day at a bank. So these can be examples of passages that will come up in this section. The next part is writing a story or a diary entry in 100 to 120 words. Again, this is something that you have to remember in the writing section of the CBSE exam is they're not only testing you on creativity and imagination, but they also want you to see how you follow the instructions they have given you. So please stick to the word limit. Please make sure you format your paragraphs in the right manner. For instance, an indentation is always recommended. If they want you to write such a story, normally they expect you to write it in two different paragraphs. Your paragraph structure should also be really well aligned, where you have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion statement. And all of it should integrate well together overall. Finally, we go into the language through literature section, which is the more important part of this curriculum. So there are two textbooks that are called Beehive and Moments. And within this, you will be expected to read some drama, prose, and poetry through the year that your teacher will read in your class and discuss with you and comprehend and interpret and analyze and evaluate with you. And based on that, you will be asked a set of questions. So when I was in school, I always wondered like how do I do really well in my English exam? I used to try to by heart the answers for these stories without putting too much thought into really building these four or five skills, which is interpretation, analysis, inference. So I think the first time you read a story in these books, just read it for pleasure and enjoyment. The second time, try to read it for textual interpretation. What kinds of words, what kinds of sentences, what kinds of paragraphs are there? The third time, try to look at the themes that you see in this text. The fourth time, try to compare the events in the text with another book you have read. The fifth time, try to talk about some of the words that you have read. And then maybe the sixth time, appreciate the language that is used in this in a less technical sense, where you're looking at the figures of speech or the way sentences and words have been put together. So when you focus on that, you will really be able to achieve this learning outcome or this sort of assessment or technique, because I think that is the expectation that teachers have of you, which I think students sometimes forget. We get so consumed in acing the exam that we forget that the purpose of an exam is to help you become more competent with certain learning objectives. So now that you understood the learning objectives, focus on how you can become very competent and achieve these learning objectives rather than only acing the exam. And at the end of the day, most of the English language and literature curriculum comes down to four skills, which are reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And the more you do that outside home, not just in your classroom, the better you will get in English language and literature. And that is why I truly believe reading for pleasure is so important and it's so vital for any person that wants to do well in their English language and literature exams. So the more you read outside school, the better. The more you listen to English being spoken outside school, the better. Which is why I recommend podcasts and I recommend films, because these are places where you can learn English being spoken at a very fast pace in different contexts. So, yeah. Now, what are some of the prose and poems that they have recommended? Again, I think you are not expected to read everything. Your school or context will choose a poem, a prose piece, and then you will be expected to analyze and understand this prose and poem piece. Again, I will make individual videos to understand each piece in this section. Okay. All right. So, So that's a breakdown of what the expectations are for the grade 9 curriculum, and I'll come out with another video talking about the grade 10 curriculum in some time as well. Thank you for listening. This is the Teacher Tuber, and until next time, keep learning.